All right, guys, what's going on? In today's video, I wanted to talk about or discuss a little bit of how Mcfarlane losing the license, has it been a failure or a success? Now, we'll take a look at this by comparing it to other runs that Mattel had, as well as taking a peek into how Mcfarlane will end his run officially as the DC Comics figure maker, because we do know that not anything is exactly set as of now. We're not sure how the license may be officially split up or what Mattel will do, what their scale will be. I'm pretty sure they're going to be the ones that will be in the toy aisle, but there is some discussion about if Mcfarlane will continue with making 7-inch DC figures only to be sold in the collector's spaces at stores such as the Target collector's area, as well as a Walmart electronics collector's area. That could be a possibility. Now, in the comments, you do see a lot of people saying that Mcfarlane is done, put put a fork in him, RIP. And that's, kind of a simple way to look at it. I do not see Mcfarlane really being done. It's just going to move on to another phase of Mcfarlane Toys and their relationship with DC, because, of course, Mcfarlane owns and runs DC Direct, which has always been a subsidiary of DC Comics. So while Mattel may run the retail line, the official toy aisle run, we could still see Mcfarlane making DC products in the foreseeable future. Now, getting back to, was Mcfarlane's run with DC a failure? Now, I would have to say, of course, no, because he gave us so many figures and is not even done. He still has another year or more with the line. And as we know, Mcfarlane can put out a mass amount of product. So you're looking at least 100 more figures by the end of the run. Now, a lot of people like to tout DC Universe Classics as one of the best, or if not the best, DC Comics line that was ever produced. And while I do own the whole DC Universe Classics run, in fact, I own them in box and I own them loose, and I was a big fan of the line while I was actively collecting it. Over time, it has grown to be just a cookie cutter comic version of DC. And while they did give us a lot of wanted characters, it's not like they completed every figure that people would have wanted to see, or even newer versions of characters that have become really popular that DC Classics never got around to making. Now, if you compare the years that they ran, DC Classics ran from 2008 to 2012, which officially made it 4 years. Now, non officially, they did go on for more than a year and a half of the Signature series, which, of course, was the online Matty Collector line. And this was just aimed at collectors only. But it is funny to see that although it was aimed at collectors, collectors did not sell enough of it to keep it going for more than a year and a half. So, in all actuality, if you count this as one line, they only ran for 5.5 years, putting out about, I'd say more than 300. You're looking at close to 400 figures in total. Now, they never released any vehicles. Did one throne, which was that Metron throne that I do own. They also didn't do any kinds of dioramas or anything like that. So basically, in the whole time they had the line for DC Classics, they only made one throne. They never made any other kinds of vehicles. So that will pale in comparison to, of course, Mcfarlane's DC Multiverse. Now, DC Multiverse is looking at more than 6 years of a run, you're looking at over 600, 800 figures. We may even get to around 1,000 by the end of the run. And you're looking at not only DC Direct, which I include them in the DC Multiverse, the page punchers, because they are 7 inch as well and compatible with your DC Multiverse figures. The stark contrast is that Mcfarlane has done tons of extra stuff to add on with your figures. He's done some air vehicles, which may continue. He's done a lot of Batmobiles that people thought would never be made. Hell, he's even done horses, so that's something that we never saw in DC Universe Classics, as well as he's done a couple of thrones, and there's even a couple more on the way, and even dioramas, which, although not great, they are an added accent to your complete DC Multiverse line. So in all actuality, he far surpassed DC Universe Classics. And if you want to get out of the debate on his character choices, which, in reality, a lot of people are more happier with what he's releasing now compared to his start, he has done a full range of classic figures, new era figures, concept figures, live action figures, and video game figures. Now, DC Universe Classics was centralized around comic book based images of figures and characters. And that is where you get into the Mattel multiverse. Now, the Mattel multiverse didn't really continue the DC Universe Classics formula of action figure making. They did lean more on live action and video games while sporadically putting out a couple of comic figures here and there. And personally, this was a main part of why I disassociated myself from Mattel's DC Multiverse. I was just never a big live action collector. So this portion of the run for Mattel I just wasn't a real big fan of, which you could kind of tell in the sales. A lot of those movies like Suicide Squad, Aquaman, Wonder Woman. I remember seeing those forever on the shelves. They just were not big sellers. And although I think this was a major decision by Warner Brothers to lean into the live action, completely abandoning the DC core comic collectors and figure collectors was, I think, a big mistake, which ended up shortening the run for Mattel's DC Multiverse to less than 3 years. And in that time, they released very minimal figures. It was a great assortment. The waves they released were spread out over months and years, which wasn't the same production that was met by DC Universe Classic. So that run from Mattel for Mattel's Multiverse, I kind of deem as a failure. And although DC Universe Classics is hailed as a success by a lot of collectors, they did fall into their own trap at the end of their run, which was, talked about even by the head product manager, where he stated that once we got away from our core Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, our main hitters, that is where sales drastically reduced. And even though we pumped out more obscure characters, female figures, the sales were just not there with the common consumer in the toy aisle, which was one of the main downfalls of DC Universe Classics. And while Mattel's DC Multiverse that leaned more into the movies, they did produce some vehicles, way more than DC Universe Classics ever did. It still wasn't enough to push the line into a giant success. And in the end, that is why I say that this was a hell of a run for McFarlane. The proof of that being that while he did get a lot of hate and people that are not happy with the way he ran the license, you do have the other side of the coin where people are starting to already regret Mattel getting the license, and they haven't even officially started yet. But people see McFarlane's potential and what the future could have brought us. So, although there is a lot of people celebrating the fact that McFarlane lost the license and that Mattel will be taking over, there is still a big support for McFarlane and a lot of collectors that really enjoy what he did with the DC license. And as I stated before, we do not know for sure what will happen. After the most recent reveals from McFarlane, you're getting more and more people that are really regretting that McFarlane will lose the license because they have been showcasing a lot of things that people really want and just a taste of what McFarlane really can do with the DC multiverse. So until we find out all the details between Warner Brothers, Mattel, McFarlane, how they decide to go about this, what scales and what deals are made, we're still left with a glimmer of hope of what we will see in this final year from McFarlane. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think down below. Catch you in the next one.